to me. Talk legal to me.
Welcome to the Talk Legal to Me podcast. I'm your host, Shanita Q, and today we will be discussing parenting time and child support. We are joined by our guest, Angela Larimer. Angela, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and the areas that you practice.
Oh, sure. My name's Angela Larimer. Thank you for inviting me to be on your podcast today. I really appreciate it. I've been doing domestic relations law since 2003. It's a second career for me. I actually went into domestic relations in law school because of my own painful divorce that my children and I went through about 28 years ago now. It's been.
Okay.
And I had a lawyer flippantly say to me one day, lady, if you don't like what you're going through, get your own law degree and see if you can make changes. So that's exactly what I did. And I've been doing it ever since. I graduated from DePaul in 2003. I've recently received my master's degree from the University of Illinois, University of Chicago, and in creative writing. And I also have a teaching degree in the state of Illinois. So I try to use all my degrees to assist my clients to understand what's going on. It's very important to me that all my clients are part of their own legal team, so they can get an idea of exactly what's going on, so they understand why we're making the decisions we are, why we're moving the case in certain directions, and what good results will really look like.
Yeah, I think that is really good. I also use, every degree that I've had. I actually got a master's degree in sociology. And so it was one of the things that I did to basically enhance my application to law school. And so I actually teach for City Colleges of Chicago. I teach in their sociology department as well as the paralegal program. And so the one thing that I have found with respect to practice in law is that sociology degree, learning how and why people do the things that they do and understanding behavior, it helps a lot, especially in this, in this field.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and so so that is so. Being a lawyer and practicing law is not just, one dimensional and about arguing, before the court. Okay.
Absolutely.
So wonderful. All right. So let's get into it. So Angela, let's talk about what is perceived as the biggest misconception about child support and parenting time and whether they're legally dependent upon each other.
Actually, they are. On July 1st in 2017, the legislature decided to change the laws on child support. Back in the old days, prior to that, the person that was considered the non-custodial parent, or the person that had less parenting time, was considered the payor, that he or she is the one that paid the child support. It was based upon their income. For one child, it was 20%, two children, 30%, and so on. Now, after July 1st, 2017, the legislature determined that both parents have an obligation to support the children. For one, it took away some of the bitterness that the payor had, saying, hey, you get to keep all your income, and yet I'm paying you on top of that, and you're not really contributing anything to the kids on top of it. So it took away that argument for what the legislator thought would be more effective co-parenting. So three things go into consideration as the base for child support. Both parents' income, as well as how many overnights the parents enjoy with the children. The base threshold is 146 overnights. If the payor has 146 or more overnights, it will likely reduce their child support obligation because they deem that they'll have more responsibility during their parenting time. The other thing that gets factored into that is healthcare premiums. If per chance someone's on state aid, then there isn't the state health insurance, there won't be a premium. But if they're using their employer insurance, it's not considered, say for instance, a man is paying child support, he's got health insurance for himself and two children, it wouldn't be a third. There's usually a base for the individual and then an add-on expense for the kids. It's the add-on expense that would be calculated into the child support so that both parents pay a portion of that based upon their equitable division of their income.
And so how do individuals get that add-on? Is that something easy for the employer or the employer's insurance carrier to calculate?
Yeah, actually, they can give you whenever you're working at any company, they'll
Mm-hmm.
give you a price list for how much it's for individual
Mm-hmm.
insurance, individual plus dependents. It's the dependency amount. So we just take the total amount for the individual and dependents
Mm-hmm.
and minus the individual, and that's the difference for the child related fee.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so it sounds like so it's not a misconception that parenting time and child support are not connected. They actually are, right?
That is correct.
And how we deal with the support is based on what we know it as being the income shares model, but
That is correct.
it must what's most I guess what our listeners can think of as a combined, combined income from both parties.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay.
And the income shares will kick in if
Hmm.
the payor has 146 or more overnights.
Okay. And so if they do not have 146 or more overnights, how is child support calculated?
Well, it's still considered, both
Hmm.
parents' income still considered, but they don't weigh it as heavily towards a more equitable division. So we use a software program called Family Law Software. It's really wonderful.
Hmm.
The judges don't like us hand calculating anymore, so that those went in the way gone more than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
There's also an HFS calculator that people can utilize online, and then you put in your gross income, the other person's gross income, how many overnights each parent enjoys. There's 365 days in the year. And then if they have the threshold of 146, it tries to make an equilibrium on it. It also calculates the Illinois state taxes and the federal taxes too. So it's always an updated calculation.
Okay. And so what counts as income for child support?
Yeah, income from all sources. So if you're a waitress, they're going to calculate tips. If you say,
Hmm.
hey, you know what, they're just not paying me tips anymore, then a lot of people may try to become evasive. So
Hmm.
what will happen if they're evasive? Say a person's a landscaper and they've got a base of minimum wage. Now, minimum wage is looked at differently in Chicago, say Oak Lawn, Tinley Park, Arlington Heights. There's a different minimum wage in every single town.
Hmm.
So we look at the minimum wage in the town in which the parents live, and then we look at an imputed income. Say they want to try to hide money if they're getting cash on the side. Then they'll look at what an average person receives in cash for that particular job. So there will be an imputed income if they're trying to hide the asset.
Okay. And so that is good because I guess the other thing I wanted to talk to you about is what happens when a parent is not working or intentionally not working and trying to hide income.
They'll get stuck with a child support or a child support amount that they have to pay regardless. They will impute an income on them. It usually ends up depending on. It's a little bit different for most judges, but I'd say in general there's a standard. Like I said, if you're living in Chicago, I think it's $16.50 an hour right now, which equals about $36,000 to $38,000 a year. We multiply it out by 40 hours a week and 52 hours or 52 weeks in a year to get a standard income. So you're not going to dodge paying child support. And there's actually in the statute, there's a built-in a minimum award that will go towards your children.
Okay. And so are judges allowed at any time to modify child support? And if so, under what circumstances?
Yeah. Child support will not automatically change if you lose your job, if you have an increase in income, if you have extraneous circumstances and say you're on short-term disability. Oral agreements in Illinois are not allowed. They are not upheld in court. You must go in court and get a modification. If you don't, and this is what happens a lot of times, I'll have someone come to me and say, hey, I had a child support on me. She put me on child support 3 years ago. I was out of work for 2 years. She agreed to abate it, and now we're going to go back to what it was. He will be charged with all those child support amounts that he didn't pay per month. There's actually a famous case down in southern Illinois of a farmer that took his child. He was raising his son from a very young age, and she had a child support award. He literally had to sell the farm to pay the award because even though he had the child, they gave him some discretion. He did modify the support order. So it's super important that you file a motion to modify the support order, or you enter into an agreed order and enter it in court. Otherwise, you will be legally liable for the amount that you were deemed to have to pay.
Okay. So here is one question I get all the time, or I hear all the time. Well, we basically share the responsibilities for our kids. We split the parenting time 50-50. So why should I have to pay child support? Or, because we split, 50-50, in some cases, individuals do not have an obligation to pay child support. How does that work?
Okay. Well, say that you and I are parents of someone, and you make $100,000 and I make $50,000. What the statute allows for is how much would it cost, and what would the living experience be for the child had the parents stayed together. So they're going to look at lifestyle as well. Because you make twice as much as me, even though we have equal parenting time, you will likely owe me some child support to raise the standard of living for that child as to what that child should have experienced had we stayed together. So that even though there's a 50-50 parenting time, which would be one parent gets 182 overnights a year and the other parent gets 183 or 182.5 each, which equals the 365. If one parent is making substantially more money than the other one, that child has a right to live the lifestyle he or she should have enjoyed had the parents stayed together. So there will be a child support award. Child support can never be completely terminated or eliminated because circumstances can change. So child support's always modifiable on a change in circumstance. Parents lose a job, they get disabled, they have maybe the parent or the child gets leukemia, and now the child has more needs, so that's modifiable. The child develops ADHD and needs tutoring or something extra on that. So that wouldn't be covered by the main child support amount. That would be covered by what's called child-related expenses. So a lot of people who go through the state of Illinois to determine child support, and they'll call a state's attorney and say, hey, can you get me child support? They can get child support through the state, but they won't get child-related expenses. And that would be uninsured medical.
Okay.
That would be school expenses, and that would also be extracurricular. Your children have a right to have extracurricular activities in their life, and it enhances their social abilities as well as keeps them physically active. So that would be prorated based upon income. So if we use the example where you're making 100 and I'm making 50, they'll add in, if there's alimony being paid from the payer to the other side, it increases their income and reduces the other side to calculate child support, but it would be prorated based upon the net income of both parties. So say, for instance, you made 2/3 of the net and I make 1/3, you would be 2/3 responsible for the child-related fees.
Okay. And so in scenarios where parents agree that there will be no support order, that agreement is still modifiable, correct?
It is, because at any time something could change where the child needs support. So what we do is we reserve it in those situations, which isn't uncommon. We do a reservation of it. But at any time, that's the key word, substantial change of circumstance. I usually tell my parents that if either one of your incomes goes up or down by 20%, that would be a good rule of thumb. And so I usually, in all of my agreements, have that they exchange tax returns every year. However, if they're remarried, I would say exchange W-2s and income from all sources, because they may not want to disclose the income of the other parent, of the step parent.
Right. Okay. So let's shift away from the money part, and then let's talk about parenting time.
Yeah.
So when we hear the term parenting time, what does that mean?
Parenting time is how much time each parent spends with the children. That would be their regular schedule. Say mom has the kids every Monday, Tuesday, dad has every Wednesday, Thursday, and then they alternate Friday through Sunday. That's the typical what we call 2-2-5 schedule.
Okay.
Because when you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And if you're the Monday, Tuesday person, you're going to have 5 days in a row. Then they'll have 2. Then they have 5 days in a row, 2, 5. So that's parenting time. And another time that you'll have parenting time is for the holiday schedule. So that's another thing that we'll take into consideration is the holiday schedule. You know, if you're Jewish, who's going to have the children during the Jewish holidays, same with Muslim. We do all kinds of parenting agreements. If you're agnostic, maybe you don't want to celebrate Christmas and Christmas time or Thanksgiving, usually everyone celebrates, then we swap off those. So parenting time is truly just that. Which parent has the children when? So one of the other confusions is a lot of people still call it visitation. Parenting time with the parent isn't visitation. You're not visiting with your kids. When you're the parent, you're doing parenting time.
You're parenting, yeah.
Exactly. Visitation is what grandparents do, step-parents do, aunties and uncles do, and those type of things. So they have visitation with the kids, and they can petition. There have been times that I've petitioned for visitation for a grandparent. Say their child dies and they want to establish the relationship, and maybe they've got a rocky relationship with the surviving parent. They can go into domestic relations and ask for visitation. So that's the difference between parenting time and visitation.
Okay. And that was where I was going with the visitation, but I also wanted to touch on a little bit about what we used to talk about, custody, right?
Oh, yeah.
And parenting time. So, and I still get it, a lot. I want, full custody, of my kids. Da, da, da. So how does Illinois now handle the term custody?
Exactly. Custody no longer exists as of July 1st in 2017 when they did an overhaul of what's called the Illinois Domestic Relations and Marriage Dissolution Act. Because when people get arrested, what do? We get put in custody. So people were fighting for that word. And so they got rid of the word and they called it now parenting time. So what we have instead of a parenting agreement is what we call an allocation of parental responsibilities. We have parenting time as part of that, who gets the kids when. And then we've got decision making for the kids. There are 4 main areas that the legislator deemed was important to designate who gets decision making. Now, if parents are reasonably getting along, usually the default is going to be joint decision making. If your kids get really sick and you need some extra doctors to opine upon how your kid's doing and get second opinions, then you jointly decide. There are 4 main areas. I use the acronym here when I'm talking to my clients, HERE. You got health care. Who's going to make those medical decisions for the kids? Education. Are the kids going to go to Catholic school, Jewish school, or public school? That's education. Or religion. How are you going to raise the kids? What kind of religion are you going to inundate them? Sometimes if maybe one parent's Buddhist and the other's Catholic, they can say, we each have the right to integrate and explain to the children our own religious beliefs, and we won't denigrate the other parent's beliefs so that eventually when they get older, they can decide. And then we have extracurricular activities. Is the children going to go to Taekwondo? Are they going to do ballet or dance? Are they going to do wrestling? That's extracurricular. So what can happen too, I've had cases, say dad's a doctor and mom's an educator. They may say, hey, dad's got a better idea what's going to go on with the medical. We'll give him so on medical, but you got to keep me informed of what's going on. And mom is the educator, may want to do all the education, considering tutoring, advanced skills, AP courses or whatever, because she's got the best skill on that, and then they'd split. So it's not across the board. You can have joint, or you can have singles and join on others. So those are the other areas. So those are the 2 main areas of all parenting agreements.
Okay, wonderful. And so when it comes to determining, let's say we have a scenario where the parties just cannot agree, right? They're just contentious. They can't agree on whether apple is an apple.
Yes.
So what happens in those situations? How does the court, consider, parenting time?
The courts are going to consider the best interest of the child.
Okay.
Now, there's 17 different factors they take into consideration. When the parents are arguing like cats and dogs, the judge wants to get them and keep them out of court, because if they drag this contention out, there is no way it's not going to affect those poor kids,
Yeah.
because the parents aren't getting along. They're going to get caught in the crossfires.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually what happens is the judge will split up the decision making, because they cannot agree to anything. And so he or she will determine who is the best fit for one of those four main areas, the HERE areas, the healthcare, education, religion, and extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
They'll do it through an evidentiary hearing. They'll hear from both sides. And the parent who's more likely to also support the relationship with the other parent may gain more tactical advantage in having decision making, because they're not going to stonewall the other parent out of having information on the children.
Yeah. Okay. And so when we talk about parenting time and the schedules, do the children have a say? And if they do, at what age would a child have a say in the amount of parenting time that one parent would have?
Technically, the children don't have a say per se, because what would happen then is the parents would start coaching them. Well, you love it here at mommy's house way more than daddy. Daddy doesn't take you to McDonald's. Daddy doesn't buy you these gifts and things like that. And that causes a lot of upset for the children, because children inherently want to love both of their parents and have a relationship with both parents. So what ends up happening is, if the child's over 13, I had mentioned before, there's 17 factors that the courts take into consideration. The wishes of the child is one of the factors that is considered when the child's old enough to determine and make a more mature conversation about what he or she wants. So a lot of times they'll hire or appoint a guardian ad litem or a child representative, not the parents' attorneys, but a third party that actually represents the court, because each of these judges, particularly in Cook County, have over 5,000 cases on their docket.
Yeah.
So they can't go out and talk to every single parent and every single attorney out there. So what they do is they hire an attorney to go be the eyes and the ears of the court. I need you, Miss Larimer, I work as a guardian ad litem, to go out and visit their homes, see what the home setup is, talk to the kids, talk to third-party witnesses, and talk to the parents, and investigate for me what you believe is in these children's best interest, and report to me what your investigation entails. So that's one of the factors. They also look at what each parent's wishes are. Why does this parent want more parenting time? What's their goal? They'll take a look at also the amount of time that each parent spent prior to the dissolution or the parenting. Because all of a sudden, if the parent, because keep in mind, there's a component of child support that is tied to parenting time. So now the pair who's making $100,000 says, geez, if I get more time with Jimmy and Sally over here, I'm going to have to pay my wife or my baby mama less money. So I'm going to now ask for all this extra time. Where in the last 12 years, he never took but 4 days a month.
He never did anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So they will look at the court will absolutely look at the history of the parenting time to determine if this is a ploy for tactical advantage in the court, or if this is something this person's always asked for. Your Honor, here's my 50 emails every month asking for more time. She just denied me. So that shows a vested interest in wanting at it. They'll also take a look at the child's adjustment to the school and the home and their friends around there, in what the child's needs are. If the child has special needs and mom's a nurse and maybe they have nebulizer and get colic or something, so every family is very individualized. They also take a look at the parent's distance. If you've got one parent living up in Lake County and the other parent living on the south side, the parent on the south side is probably not going to get 50-50 parenting time, because there's no way that the child should be commuting 2 hours a day to get to school and back. So they take a look at practicalities as well. They also take a look at whether or not there's substance abuse or mental issues that are going to affect the parenting time. If they are, they may say, parent A, you need to go get on medicine for your bipolar. or we need to see you actively involved in AA or
Mm-hmm.
NA, or we need to make sure that your parole officer says that you're keeping your job, you're doing your drug drops correctly, and your child's not in danger. So they take a look at that. They look at whether or not there's physical violence that's ever occurred, emotional violence, because emotional violence can actually often be more scarring and have longer term detrimental effects on the child than a spanking that ever
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
So those kind of things all get taken into consideration. And then there's a catch-all of those 17, any factors that go for that particular family, because we're all unique families.
Yep.
We all have unique income. We have unique ways of raising our kids. We have unique economic circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
We have unique emotional abilities in handling certain things. And so all these factors get taken into consideration for parenting time.
That's good. So one thing that you mentioned that I wanted to talk about is school, and this is fitting, especially now since we're at the time of year where school is about to start again. Um, and I've had it before. So how do you handle the situation where one parent rushes to enroll a child in school where they live because the child is with them at the time, or they want to make sure that they are the parent that gets the majority of the parenting time. And a lot of people kind of feel that, and because courts like to maintain the status quo, that if a child is enrolled in school in a certain district, then that parent is going to have the majority parenting time. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Well, obviously that's very tangential. There's a lot of pieces on that. If they will take into consideration status quo. These children have relationships with their peers. They have relationships with their school. There's a comfort area. I don't know if you've ever moved as a young kid and had to change school. I had
All
to
the
do that
time.
in
Yep.
sixth grade, and
Yep.
it was devastating for me. You'd be popular and get along with all your friends in one, and then you got a better education at the old school than you got here. Now you're getting singled out because you're smarter, and because you just had different education. And kids are cliquey.
Yeah.
Kids can be really cliquey, and there's a lot of bullying that goes on and things like that. So, but take into consideration the children's status quo, the distance between the schools. Now, let me tell you one thing that is important. Custody still exists as far as school is concerned. The school code has not caught up to the domestic relations code. So the school code requires someone have custody of the kids. So what happens is we have to say, for school purposes only, one parent has custody for school purposes only. It doesn't elevate or denigrate either parent's rights or responsibilities. It's only for the schooling. I have had cases where mom may live in the city in a public school district that's not so great, and dad may live in Niles and the school is so much better, but they don't live but maybe 10-15 minute drive from each other. So we may give dad, who only has 4 to 6 overnights a month, school custody, so the kids can go to that school and get a better education.
And that's good. And that takes co-parenting. From a practical standpoint, it makes a whole lot of sense, because you really want to have your child receive the best education, especially in situations like that.
Right.
So that is actually that is really good. Now, I'm sure since you've been practicing, you've had it. I've also had it as well, especially in working as a GAL, because we both do that kind of work as well. What happens when children are of age? Let's say they become teenagers, and then they simply refuse or just do not want to have parenting time with another parent.
Well, there's two things that can happen. One, the parent who's not receiving the parenting time can file a motion.
Okay.
And the courts will take a look at why this child is being obstinate. I have had instances where kids are smoking pot over at the other parent's house and they're not getting their homework done, and the boys are allowed to have girls overnight, and so now mom's not looking so good, because
Yeah.
she's got rules and regulations, and gosh darn it, you're not going to get your allowance, Junior, if you don't take your trash out and pick up your room and get your homework done. Whereas
Yeah.
dad's free flowing because he's got more money than mom's, potentially. So there are issues like that go on, particularly as kids get older. So they're going to take a look at the circumstances. If there is an emotional breakdown between the parents and the parent and the child, they will suggest what's called reunification therapy. So there you go, you parent who's having difficulty with your child can go talk with a reunification therapist to get to the bottom of what this impediment is, as long as the other parent isn't alienating or involving the child into not wanting to be with the other parent. You don't want to go over there. Daddy does this, daddy does that. That is so detrimental to the children. What parents really need to understand when they're going through a legal separation, a divorce, or a parenting dispute, this is not about you anymore.
Yeah.
This is about your kids. And kids come into the world and they are innocent and they are pure. And what happens to them in our homes with the security, the unconditional love, and the support we give to our kids really helps them throughout their entire life. When we are bickering with the other parent, when we are denigrating the other parent, when we are not cooperating with the other parent, it's going to destabilize your child's environment and can have a rippling effect throughout their life. So that's kind of the courts will take a look at what that impediment is, and they've got all kinds of different avenues to try to cure that defect so that the parent and the child can have a healthy relationship.
That's good. And so that'll take us right into our next segment or topic. And that's basically when parents use, money, to basically have disputes. So it's a situation where we're, calling a child support dispute or a parenting time dispute. It's really not about child support or parenting time. It's about unresolved issues between the parents. So how often do you see parents using money or parenting time or both as leverage?
A lot. We
Okay.
see that a lot. He's not
Yeah.
paying me. He's not seeing the kids,
Mhm.
or she didn't pay all the extracurriculars and I had to forfeit all that money out and she hasn't reimbursed me. She's not going to see the kids. You cannot withhold the children for money. They
Mhm.
are completely two different statutes. They are often two separate different orders because money and the amount of financial obligation that each parent has to raise these children in a healthy environment, meet all their basic needs, and if it's a lifestyle also because they're high income wage earners or one party has more money, that's taken into effect. The right to have a relationship, the statutory right to have a relationship with your child is not dependent upon the money. Okay, you cannot withhold the child if the other parent is withholding money. You will get in as much trouble as the parent that's not paying. So
Yeah.
and the children have a need to be supported, have their needs met, but they also have a statutory right to have a relationship with the parent. You can't do it because there's that old saying, two wrongs don't make a right.
Yep.
And it's two wrongs. That's exactly what happens. We see it quite often.
I find myself telling clients all the time, when I hear, well, it's this person's turn to pay this or that person's turn to pay that. And they literally will not want to pay it because they're keeping track of whose turn it is. I tell people all the time, well, if it's going to benefit, your child, why not just pay it? Because you can always fight about the money that's owed to you for X, Y, and Z because you can prove payment. If you pay it, it's easy to prove it. You can always, fight about that, in court, but don't hold the child up. Don't force the child to not, be available or able to partake in an activity just because you're paying it and the other party, is not. So and similar, do you have similar situations where you're finding yourself saying the same thing to parents?
I am, yes, very much so. And what they end up happening, and parents don't take this into consideration, you're not punishing the other parent. you're hurting your child.
Yeah.
They have a right to have this relationship. And when you withhold the parenting time for money, you are hurting the child's relationship with their other
Mm-hmm.
parent, and you're putting them in the middle because they have part of their security system is relying upon this routine that they have with the parents. They know I'm always going to be with mom and dad on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is the other parent, and then we're going to divide out the weekends. They have stability in knowing what their structure's also like. What I also see sometimes
Mm-hmm.
is Jack signed the kids up for soccer, and it's also happening on my weekend. I'm not taking them to the games. I'm not taking them to the practices. Who gets hurt in that situation? The child
The
does.
child.
Because
Yeah.
absolutely, they may be the star player. Now, not only are they not participating in something they love,
Mm-hmm.
they're hurting their teammates. And
Yep.
their teammates are their social circle. So this is a direct effect, a detrimental, highly detrimental effect on the kids. And it puts them in a precarious position at school, with their friends, with their
Mm-hmm.
extracurriculars, and at times they can be even taken off teams because they're not a reliable source to show up for the team.
So
So
when you have situations like that where parents are, you know, putting their feelings ahead of the child, where they're more concerned about the anger or the emotions that they're still harboring against the other parent, and they can't separate that from their responsibilities as a parent. How do you handle that?
I ask them actually usually to come into my office. I want to sit down and have a heart to heart with them. I went through a divorce myself many, many years ago, and I remember telling my mom, this was when I was in law school, and I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a lawyer at the time.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, I hope he doesn't go out and get happy and all that. He's caused us a lot of suffering. And you know what my mother said to me? You want him happy. You want him to have a good life because he'll be the best dad ever to your kids. And
Yeah.
I remember thinking, well, whose side you on? At first, I'm like, you're my mother. You should be supporting me. And she was supporting me because she was supporting my children who I love unconditionally. And she was right. But I got caught up just like everybody else because I'm human. At that time, before I became a lawyer, I got caught up in my own emotions. This
Mm-hmm.
is about your children.
Yeah.
This is not about you anymore. So when you get caught up in your anger and your emotions, when you finally get to the point in life and saying, you know what, we are together because we really weren't happy with each other. Because you can't be happy with somebody that's not getting along with you. So it's a two-way street. But it doesn't mean you're not going to be happy in a good fit with somebody else. There's over 8 billion people in this world. We can do better. We can find a better fit for ourselves, and we got to let go of what that hurt or pain was to us, because
Mm-hmm.
guess what, 99% of the time that person's hurting too. We're just not seeing it because they're not, particularly men don't display their emotion as much as women often do, but it doesn't mean that they're not going through their grieving process too. But we can't put that out on our kids. So
Yeah.
I do try to invite people in to have that conversation of letting go, so that you can not only improve your own life and your own happiness, that improvement of your life and your happiness is going to bleed out on your kids. And that's real important.
And I agree with that 100%. And so I think that having that mindset and taking that into perspective can also come into play when life changes, because I tell people all the time, life happens, it happens to all of us, and we don't know, what's going to happen. How you're where you are today may not be where you're going to be tomorrow. And so with these parenting agreements and parenting arrangements, and because life can happen, you have to think in terms of um this parent might have majority parenting time today, but I might need to have it, later, or it might come to you. So at a later time. So speak about how parenting plans can change over time. For example, a parenting plan that you might have in place, because a lot of people put these parenting um, plans in place very early on in a child's life. So you may have a 4-year-old at the time that you enter into a parenting plan, but then now this child is now 14, and circumstance have now changed. So how can they be modified? What are some good reasons for modification? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sometimes, yeah, for sure. Um, Kids are humans just like we are.
Yeah.
So they're going to evolve over time. They're going to have different circumstances.
Hmm.
Um, I try to keep people out of court as much as possible, to be honest.
Yeah.
I do try to settle things out amicably. I know a lot of lawyers may not necessarily do that. You know, that those are the ones that give the rest of us bad names.
Hmm.
You and I are into supporting the families and the
Yep.
structure and the children, and that's what's most important. Is I can often help them navigate an amicable resolution, or they can go to what's called a co-parenting coach,
Yep.
and they can discuss all the parameters of what's going on in this child's life in their own lives, because their own lives can have, maybe mom got remarried, she's got two younger little kids, and then now the 14-year-old doesn't want to be as much at mom's because she's baby timing all the time, and
Hmm.
dad's still single and he's got a little bit more time to spend with their son, and it may just be a more conducive situation. It doesn't mean that mom's hurting and she's a bad parent. It
Yeah.
just means that the teenager's needs have evolved. So I do try to keep people out of court. We can do mediation. I do encourage mediation before court because court is high conflict. It's
Hmm.
expensive and it's controversial. And so you tend to be at each other this way because
Yep.
you're trying, anytime we're arguing with somebody, what are we trying to do? We're trying to bend them to our will. And
Yep.
there's usually somewhere that say this is mom's position and this is dad's position or vice versa. The
Hmm.
truth always happens to be somewhere in the middle, and there
Yep.
has to be some compromise on both sides. And that's what's usually best for the kids. And so I do try alternative methods outside of the court because it does tend to be controversial and it does tend to fracture co-parenting relationships more so
Hmm.
because of the high conflict.
Yep.
And that's what I typically do.
Okay, wonderful. That is great. And that is some good stuff. And I think that is what, families need to keep in mind, especially when dealing with these issues. So
Absolutely.
we talked about some heavy hitting stuff. So now I kind of want to relax a little bit and then do a little fun little
Yeah, for sure.
exercise. So we're gonna play myth, fact, or it depends. So I'm just gonna give you a scenario. You can tell me myth, fact, or it depends. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So 50-50 parenting time means no child support.
Myth.
All right. If you're not paying child support, you don't get any parenting time.
Myth.
All right. If I'm being denied parenting time, I can stop paying my child support.
Myth. We talked about that.
Yeah. My child is 14, so they can decide whether they want to see the other parent.
Myth.
All right.
Cannot.
If we verbally agree to change child support, we don't need to go back to court.
Myth.
Yeah.
Oral agreements in Illinois are not enforceable, and whoever the payer is could get stuck with a really big bill with statutory interest.
Yep. So in that scenario, you definitely want to go back to court, especially if you're the payer.
Yeah, exactly. Just get an agreed order if you need it.
Yep. The parent who earns more always pays child support.
Typically.
Okay. All right. And then last one. If my ex gets remarried, their new spouse's income counts towards my child support calculation.
It does not. It can be taken into consideration on the living expenses, and the net income, the available net income, but no, they're not paying child support for your children.
All righty. That was good. And those are some that's some good responses that you gave to our myth and fact section. So I just want to thank you for coming on. This has been very enlightening. Your story in and of itself is a wonderful story. And so what we usually do here is we usually end our time together or segment with what we call the closing argument. So that's where you're able to just, give our listeners one thing that you would like to leave them with today out of everything that we discussed. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
so Angela, give us your closing argument.
I want to say to everyone, choose your lawyer carefully. That is going to be that's the person that's going to navigate your boat through the stream and get you where you want to go. So if you don't have a good ship master, you're not going to have a good result. Try to find someone that you communicate well with, who takes the time to hear what your individual needs are for your family, your children, your hopes, and your future. Someone who's got the experience and the reputation to be able to assist you on that journey. Someone who's going to speak to you as part of the team. It's your life. It's your children. It's your future. You want to go with somebody who has a reputation, not of just going in and fighting hog tooth and nail.
Yeah.
You want to try to find somebody who may help you reach amicable resolutions. You not only keep your money in your pocket as opposed to the lawyers, you have a better chance at co-parenting, and you're going to have a better chance at keeping healthy kids. So choosing the right lawyer is really often the right step. And I wish you the very best to everybody out there that's trying to find someone that can help navigate this situation for them, because there are ways to get through it without a knockdown drag out.
And I would agree with that 100%. So, Angela, tell our listeners where they can find you if they're looking for, a divorce attorney to help them navigate in this season.
For sure. Yeah, we do divorce, we do parenting, prenups, postnups. The office number is 773-902-0200. Or you can look me up on the website at www.larimerlawllc.com. Or you can email me directly at angela@larimerlawllc.com. I'm pretty good about getting that back with everybody within 24 hours, except Sunday is my one day. I try to take some rest off on that day. So maybe a 48-hour if you email me on Sunday, but we will get back to you. You're important to us.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for taking the time to sit and listen with us on Talk Legal to Me. We will see you on our next episode.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
This episode of Talk Legal to Me is also brought to you by my memoir, Silent Tears. Silent Tears tells the story of my journey through childhood challenges, family struggles, and lessons that shaped the woman and attorney I am today. It's a powerful reminder that even in our most difficult moments, strength and purpose can emerge. If you enjoy honest conversations about life, loss, and growth, Silent Tears is for you. Visit ShanitaStraw.com to order your copy today.
The information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as legal advice. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship. If you need legal advice regarding your specific situation, please consult a qualified attorney licensed in your jurisdiction.
Talk legal to me. Talk legal to me. Break it down so I can see. Make the hard stuff sound so sweet. On the Talk legal to me. Talk